What's up, Jive Turkeys, and welcome to episode 9 of the Storytime with Boots podcast, or I should say the second episode of the 2018 NFL season, the Week 2 preview. Got a quick show for you today. We're going to touch on a few topics. Number one, we're going to recap our Week 1 picks, and I did notice that I didn't give everybody clear-cut receipt pool picks from last week. We were just kind of touching on it, but not really giving you a clear 4 picks that you could take there and obviously pick against us because we didn't have such a good week there. So we'll make sure that we do that. I've also written down my fantasy picks for Week 2. We'll be able to track that for next week's episode as well. We'll give you the receipt pool picks for Week 2. We'll also post that on social media, so we were slacking a little bit with that there. We have our fantasy picks, which we'll do the top 5 on FanDuel. We'll also pick a couple other players who are a little lower in the pay scale that might be some sleepers to watch out for. Then we'll give our Week 2 suicide pool pick, which, by the way, I am already out of one pool. Goddamn New Orleans Saints let me down, as I'm sure they let a lot of people down. Let's get right into the Week 1 picks from last week so we could see how I did. A little word of advice, if anybody wants to cash, just bet against whatever I'm going to give you for Week 2, and you should definitely cash just based on these Week 1 picks. I don't have Rob or Tom's picks, and this will be a little better organized here, but I can tell you I do have mine. And against the spread last week, I went 6, 9, and 1 push. I would have lost some big money as usual. So there you go. Next time, bet against me and you'll be sure to cash. But to start off with the Thursday game, I had the Eagles beating the Falcons 24-17. And let me just say, I didn't write down the over-unders. I know we had a lot of unders for last week. Didn't write those down in terms of what I was picking for Week 1. So I can't recall whether I won or lost on those, but I do have it written down for Week 2, so we'll be able to track that for Week 3. Week 1, Thursday game, Eagles against the Falcons. I had the Eagles winning 24-17. They won 18-12. Either way, that was a win for me. The Eagles covered the spread there and whooped some arse. Didn't look too good on the offensive end, but that defense is strong, and we will talk about them a little later in the show for Week 2. The next game I had on the slate was Minnesota, and I had them winning 27-10. They actually won 24-16. It was a little closer, came down to the wire. That was a win. They were minus 6.5, so either way, they pulled that out. That was one of my wins there against the spread. Now, the next game that I have is the Saints versus the Buccaneers. Now, the Saints were at home. The Saints were playing a Bucs team that did not have Jameis Winston, although I really don't think very highly of Jameis Winston as a football player. I think he is not very good. He also has the weirdest pregame speeches I ever saw when he's eating himself a W there. Either way, I think a lot of people probably had this on their suicide pool picks and lost. The Saints were minus 9.5, so they were the biggest favorite of the week. I had them winning 30-14. They lost, of course, 48-40, made a valiant effort at the end, but it was too little too late. Too many dumb mistakes for the Saints. And Ryan Fitzmagic, look at him with his 417-yard, 4-touchdown, 1 rushing touchdown performance. The guy, I think he had a perfect passer rating. He struck gold there. You know that's not going to happen. If he was that type of quarterback all the time, he'd be starting making the big bucks somewhere. That was a loss. Next game, we had Pittsburgh versus Cleveland. And that spread was Pittsburgh minus 4. What happened was I had Pittsburgh winning 24-17. Everybody knows that game ended in a tie. I'm sure knocking a lot of people out who had the Pittsburgh Steelers in their suicide pool as well. So that was a loss for me. And just like I was saying last week, looking at Ben Roethlisberger play, that guy's toast. He is absolutely 100% at this point in his career a product of Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, that offensive line, and that system that he's in. That guy makes some, at his age, just makes some poor choices. His physical abilities have diminished, obviously, but the choices he makes are like what a rookie would do. I just don't understand that. Next up, we had Indy and Cincinnati. I had that game, Indy winning 24-10. They lost outright. The spread was -2.5. The Bengals won 34-23, so that was a loss for me. Next up, I had Baltimore beating Buffalo 23-10 and covering the 7.5 points that they were giving Buffalo. I won that. Baltimore blew the doors off of the Bills, and looking at that Bills, just from what I saw, I didn't get to watch the whole game. I did watch some highlights. The Buffalo Bills just look uninspired. They look like they are going to bring absolutely nothing to the table this year. After week 1, already looking like they're packing it in for the season with, no real quarterback there. If not this week, within next 2 weeks or so, that young quarterback they have there, Josh, is going to be starting soon. They don't really have another option. Next up, we have the Jags and the Giants. This was a pretty good game. 27-14 is what I had Jacksonville winning by. It was actually obviously closer than that. And the Jags pulled it out 20-15. That spread was -3, so picked up a win there. We had Kansas City and the Chargers. Now, this game really surprised me because I had the Chargers as one of my 4 dark horses that could potentially be a Super Bowl champion. And one game doesn't define you, but I said my concern was Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers actually had a pretty damn good game, 424 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. I know he was playing a little bit of catch-up there, but still put up some big numbers for fantasy. Either way, Chiefs won outright. They didn't even need the 3 points they were getting, 38-28. That was a loss for old story time. The Cowboys and the Panthers, not a good game of football. I had the Panthers winning 20-17 in what could be a push because the line was +3. That turned out to be a win as the Panthers covered the spread, winning 16-8. We had the Seahawks in Denver. I had Denver winning 24-9, and I might have overshot on what Denver's capabilities were. They were -3, at least when this spread, we were looking at it last week. That was actually my push. So score was 27-24, push against the spread. We have the Cardinals versus the Redskins. I had the Cardinals winning 23-20, and the Redskins blew them out. What happened with David Johnson there, but Adrian Peterson flashing some of his old greatness that he used to have. 26 carries, 96 yards, and 1 touchdown. And the Redskins pulled away 24-6, so that was a loss for me. They didn't need the 1.5 points they were getting. Green Bay and Chicago in the Sunday night game. Who saw this coming in that first half? Khalil Mack. Wow, what a game. That guy, interception, sack, fumble, touchdown. Man, he showed off on Sunday night. And I got to think that John Gruden, who I thought didn't coach a bad game against the Rams on Monday Night Football, really going to get some criticism for letting Khalil Mack go. That guy's an absolute stud. They could have used him in spades against the Rams, but what a game he had. And then who saw Aaron Rodgers looking like a superhero that he is, coming back out in the second half with the sprained knee, limping, basically not putting any weight on that front throwing foot of his, and just throwing everything off the back foot and just threading the needle, needless to say, and bringing them back, saving me from being out of 2 suicide pools. Thank you, Aaron Rodgers. We'll take that. But ultimately, I got a loss. I thought Green Bay was going to win by 10, 27-17. They were given 7.5. Loss, great comeback for Green Bay. Hopefully they have Rodgers for this week. I don't know. We'll see. The first Monday night game, which if somebody bet this, I'm pretty sure they lost. Detroit was given 6.5 to the Jets. I had them winning 27-17, just like last game, covering the spread. Jets didn't even need the points. They wind up whooping that ass 48-17. Isaiah Crowell looked good. Bilal Powell looked good. The quarterback, after the shaky start with the interception, comes out and then looked pretty good. Darnold got it together and connected with those receivers. And Quincy Enunwa, look for him on fantasy. They look to be going to him a lot in those little short passes, which could definitely help out a rookie quarterback. So keep an eye on him fantasy-wise. That's a loss for me, 27-17, a lot of upsets. Last game, we have the Rams and the Raiders. I had the Rams winning 30-10. They were giving 4 points. Obviously, they won that pretty handedly. The first half, I thought Gruden did a good job, good game plan, coming out, running with beast mode, catching them off guard. The Rams have those 2 new stud quarterbacks, Peters and Talib, that pretty much shut down Jordy Nelson as well as Amari Cooper. So he had a good game plan. He was running it down their throat, old school football. He was using Jared Cook. He had a stud game from a fantasy standpoint. They basically gave what they could in the first half, and the Rams just took over in the second half, and that team is going to be a force to be reckoned with that defensive line, those cornerbacks. They're strong all the way around. Look out for the Rams. They can be a scary team this year. That was a win for me. Oh, I did forget the Patriots game. That was a loss as well. The Patriots won 27-20. I believe they were giving 6.5. So again, my record against the spread last week, 6-9-1. If you want to win some money, do not follow me. Now let's get into Week 2 picks. I'm going to give you my clear winners against the spread, the clear winners for the over-under, and then, again, we will be able to recap this in full for Week 3. First game I have is the Thursday night game. We have the Ravens and the Bengals. The Ravens are -1, which is interesting. The Bengals are home, but after seeing what the Ravens did to the Bills, I know the Bills suck, but that was still a blowout. The Bengals are pretty much the Bengals that we've seen for the past 5 years. Nothing special. Underutilized. A.J. Green, he's wasting his talent, unfortunately, there in Cincinnati. I don't think much of Dalton. I have the Ravens winning 27-20 because this is a divisional game. I think they could have won by more, but these divisional games are funny, so you got to keep an eye out for those. You never know what's going to happen. The over-under is set at 45, so 27-20 will give you 47 and just put you over. So Ravens seem like a safe pick. Over-under, I do have over, but, I wouldn't put too much money on that one. First Sunday game, 1 o'clock, we have another divisional game, the Panthers versus the Falcons. The Panthers are getting 6 points, but Atlanta is at home. I like the Falcons to win the game, 27-24, but I like the Panthers obviously getting the 6 points. A divisional game, 2 teams that play each other tough every year, Cam Newton versus Matt Ryan. Not the biggest Matt Ryan fan. Still don't seem to be able to get that offense together, not taking anything away from my Eagles defense, but at least they got Julio Jones. Still feel like they have more talent that just isn't showing when it comes to the scoreboard. I would take the Panthers +6. Falcons win 27-24, and that is an over with the over-under set at 44.5. It's an over giving you 51. We have the Chargers and the Bills. Chargers on the road all the way from San Diego to Buffalo, long flight, -7.5 against the Bills at home. Obviously, Bills Mafia will still be in full force, but unfortunately, I don't think this team has the same passion that its fans do. That dreadful quarterback situation, Josh Allen is still not starting. I think he will be soon. I got the Chargers winning this, bouncing back from that loss last week. That defense is going to crush Peterman, and then Rivers is going to use all the tools that he has around him, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Melvin Gordon, to just annihilate the Buffalo Bills at home. Chargers 34, Bills 13. They may not even score 13 points in my opinion. That's an over. The over-under being at 43, and I think that's mainly due to the Chargers. They're going to pretty much almost do it themselves. I wouldn't bet the house on the over-under because I could see the Bills barely scoring any points. 34-13, Chargers -7.5. This is one of my receipt pool picks, which I will recap at the end here. Yeah, go with the Chargers. I like them a lot. Next up, we have Vikings +1 in Green Bay. Now, not 100% sure yet. This is Wednesday the 12th. If Aaron Rodgers is going to start, It looks like Devontae Adams might be a little banged up, but I'm sure he'll probably play. The key is Aaron Rodgers. Now, I'm going to say this. Divisional game, these teams always play each other tough. You can never discount Aaron Rodgers, but I like the Vikes to win this pretty easily with Aaron Rodgers in the game. If Aaron Rodgers is not in the game, I don't think Green Bay has a shot, as many people do. Probably would agree. But I have the Vikes, whether or not Aaron Rodgers is in the game, take them +1. They're getting a point. And I have them winning 34-20. Now, if Aaron Rodgers is not in, stone cold lock. Lock it up. Take the Vikings. Of course, that means they'll probably lose now that I said that. Vikings +1, all over that. We have Texans and Titans at 1 o'clock playing in Nashville. I like the Texans to bounce back. I do think a couple people are banged up. DeAndre Hopkins, he'll probably be back. Not sure what the situation is with Will Fuller, but I think they bounce back from that Patriots game. Deshaun Watson did not look good, and I was pretty high on him coming into the season, bouncing back from fantasy. I hope he doesn't prove to be a one-year wonder. He showed some flashes of just absolute stud last year. So hopefully he can get back to form. I have the Texans winning, taking them -1.5, winning 31-13, which would be an under. The total is 45. So take the Texans. They are also scratch that. I changed that last minute. They were going to be one of my receipt pool picks. I pulled them. I like the Texans. Feel pretty confident. We have the Browns and the Saints, and the Saints are at home. Now, one thing I want to say, this is interesting. Drew Brees is 2-6 against AFC teams. Take that for what it's worth. I just, for the life of me, can't understand what happened last week against Tampa Bay. They have a good defense. The Saints have a good defense. They obviously have great offense, stupid mistakes, and it's just one of those games. Vegas wanted to get you. They made their call to Roger Goodell and set it all up. But I like the Browns, so I like the Saints to win 30-23, which would be a 7-point win. I would take the Browns plus the 8.5. I think the Browns cover that spread, but it's going to be close. So the 30-23 score would also be an over, which the over-under is at 49. So to recap again, Browns take them plus 8.5, barely squeaking that out, and then take the over. But either way, it's not a game I'm really that high on. 1 o'clock, still we have the Dolphins and the Jets, another divisional game. Jets are -3 at home. I think this is going to be my first push. I'm going to take the Jets -3. I think the score will be 23-20. So if the Jets do happen to pull it out, I'll take that win. But I would take the Jets -3. I do think it'll be a push with the score being 23-20. That score would give you an under with the over-under being 44 and that only being 43 points, so just under. Needless to say, with me thinking the score may be a push with the points and the over-under is going to be just under by 1 point, stay away from that game. Divisional games you don't really want a part of anyway. We have the Chiefs and Steelers with the Steelers at home. Still no signs of Le'Veon Bell, although James Conner filled in pretty adequately. I still think that Le'Veon Bell obviously is just because James Conner had the 2 touchdowns, let's not discount what Le'Veon Bell has been able to do week in and week out, year after year. We've seen D'Angelo Williams fill in and do well, but I don't think these players obviously would be able to be as consistent as Bell has been throughout the year. Also, you can just, the eye test, tell that Le'Veon Bell is a special talent. He's kind of getting screwed, in my opinion. Football players got to get their money. I mean, you look at the NBA, and you have these scrubs that are making $20, $30 million a year. And you have a guy in Le'Veon Bell who's arguably the best back in the league for the past 3-4 years, year over year, with the most yards from scrimmage. I believe it's in his career thus far, beating out the names of LaDainian Tomlinson, Jim Brown, Barry Sanders. Go ahead and look that up. Le'Veon Bell has all-purpose yards from scrimmage better than all of those Hall of Famers. If there's one running back that deserves the money who's been getting screwed over year after year by being franchise tagged, and Pittsburgh basically saying, we're not going to commit to you, even though you're the best running back in the league. I mean, I don't blame him for sitting out. It sucks that he's got to lose a lot of money, but he must have a plan in place. I don't disagree. As a football player, your contracts are not guaranteed. The NBA, you see guys just getting money, and that shit's guaranteed. It's just silly. These guys got to do what they got to do to get paid. I'm 100% for the players whenever they try to get their money, because who knows? He could go out this year, blow out his knee, and be done. And then look what it got him. I know he makes a lot of money as with the franchise tag. It's not the point. He's definitely been the best running back, in my opinion, consistently. Other guys have gotten hurt. David Johnson has been good. But this guy's consistent, produces year over year. Pay the man. After that rant, I have the Chiefs +4. I think this is a shootout. Big Ben has a couple of picks or causes some turnovers. Steelers, I have winning the game 33-30, so winning by 3 points, which means I would take the Chiefs plus the 4, and I would take the over. So of the two plays, the Chiefs barely squeaking out, getting the 4 points, or the over-under, which is set at 52.5. I see this as a shootout. I like the over in this game. That's your gambling play. Next up is one of my receipt pool picks for Week 2. My Philadelphia Eagles are away at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, by the way, one of their tackles, I forget who it was in particular, was basically begging the fans not to let the Eagles fans take over the stadium like we do. Needless to say, tickets are already sold. I think that's going to happen anyway. So it's not really going to be a Tampa Bay home game. I'm sure if you listen in, you'll probably hear the Eagles chants. I think Tampa Bay, not sure if Deshaun Jackson is going to play or not. If I had to bet, I'd say he probably is not going to play. But in my opinion, that Eagles defense is sick. And I'm not just saying that. If you watch the game against the Falcons, if you look into any of their stats and what they've been able to do in terms of the running game and what they hold teams to from a points perspective, I think they match up really well against this Tampa Bay offense. The offensive line for Tampa Bay is good, but they're not going to be able to stop that Philly defensive line. You're going to have Fletcher Cox coming up the middle. We have a four-headed monster at defensive end with Chris Long, with Brandon Graham, with Martellus Bennett. God, the rookie. I'm forgetting the rookie from last year. How can I forget my own team? We have four strong defensive ends. We have a strong defensive front. We get Nigel Bradham back at our linebacking position with him and Jordan Hicks. We are just solid all around. We might have the best safety duo in the league with Malcolm Jenkins and Rodney McLeod. And then our cornerbacks look strong. Ronald Darby had a great game, undersized. Even though Julio Jones was able to rack up some fantasy points, Julio Jones is Julio Jones. Jalen Mills looked good, and Sidney Jones, our number 2 pick from last year, who was highly touted coming out of college, all look good. Again, I think the Eagles bring the Buccaneers back down to life. If Ryan Fitzpatrick was this good as he was last week, he'd be a starter getting paid big bucks, but we know what he is. He's capable of having a few good games. And I think the Eagles' offense will do a lot better against this Buccaneers defense, who also has some people hurt in the secondary, and the Falcons' defense is stronger than them anyway. So I think we'll be able to move the ball a little bit better down the field, even with Nick Foles. I like the Eagles 27-13. The Buccaneers are, Philly is -3.5. Covering by winning by 14 points. I do like the under. I don't see the Bucs putting up a lot of points, so that's a bold prediction after the game they had last week. 27-13 would be an under, and take the Eagles, one of the locks of the week. We have the Colts and the Redskins. The Redskins are -6 at home. I like the Redskins to cover that spread. The Colts really didn't show you too much. Andrew Luck looked okay. That Colts defense is not that strong. Redskins win 24-17. I like the under in that game. But I think the Redskins have a pretty decent defense. They'll be able to hold that Colts team to 17 points. They will win -6. So go ahead, take the Redskins there. We have the Cardinals and the Rams. Now the Rams, and I'm sure this is a divisional game, So here we go, a repeat of last week when I took the Saints against the Buccaneers in a divisional game in my suicide pool with the biggest line favorite of the week. So here comes my repeat. I could just see it. I took the Rams in both the other suicide pools that I have. So it's almost probably going to be a guaranteed loss just for that reason. The Rams are minus 13. I like them to win this week at home. They looked really strong against the Raiders. As I mentioned, Gruden had a good game plan to come out in that first half and pound the ball. A lot of people probably thought that he'd try to use his two receivers with David Carr, but no, he took the other route, which I think was smart against that defensive front to catch them off guard, to get them a little winded in that heat. But he just couldn't hold up. The Rams are too strong. Those corners locked down Amari Cooper and Jordy Nelson. They did nothing all game. Their only pass relief came from Cook. So they're just a tough team, and I see them shutting out the Cardinals' offense. David Johnson didn't do much last week. He's not going to do much this week with those two horses they got in Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh on the front line. So Rams winning 38-17. I like the over, which is set at 45, really because I think the Rams are going to put up a ton of points. We have Lions and 49ers. They are in Levi's Stadium in San Francisco. I like Detroit getting the 6 points. I have this being a really close game. I see the Niners winning it 24-20, but I like Detroit getting the points, and this would also be an under. The over-under set at 48, so I like Detroit getting the 6. Next up, we have an old classic divisional game, the Raiders and the Broncos. Raiders are +6 away. Broncos are home. I like the Raiders to actually win this game outright. So Raiders win this game 24-20. They bounce back. My only knock on Gruden so far, I didn't think he coached a bad game again against the Rams. I think he was just overmatched, and it showed in the second half. But he let Khalil Mack go. And that is going to haunt him for the rest of this season and probably for the rest of his time as the Raiders coach. That being said, I do think they bounce back and beat a Broncos team that didn't look like anything special last week. 24-26, take them plus the 6, and that's an under with the over-under set at 46, just barely going under. We have a good game, which should probably be the game of the week, a rematch of the AFC Championship last year, the Patriots versus the Jaguars. Jaguars are at home, although they still don't really draw much of a home crowd. They are +1 at home. And I think the Jags win this outright. I think they get their revenge against Tom Brady. That defense is strong. Really, really strong. They were able to limit those studs in New York with everyone that they have. You know, Saquon Barkley, ODB, Sterling Shepard had a decent game. Evan Ingram dropped some balls, but that defense is good. And I think they get the best of the Patriots at home. Jags 27-24, take the over, which was set at 45. This will be at 51. Jags in the over. Giants and Cowboys, another divisional game. A lot of people think this is a must-win, being in the NFC East. Eagles being heavily favored to win the NFC East. So one of these two teams really fighting for a wild card spot potentially. And people say even though this early in the season, week 2, this could be a defining game. Cowboys are at home. Giants are getting 3 points, and I see the Giants winning this outright, +3. I have the Giants winning big, 31-17. I think that offense with Saquon Barkley, with threats they have at the receiver position, and Evan Ingram at tight end, is going to be way too much for that Dallas defense. They are not going to be able to stop that offense. Dallas offense, their line being injured or out, really is a shell of itself. No Jason Witten. Nothing really special. Dak Prescott, although a good guy, seems like a good guy, doesn't really seem to be the football player everybody thought he was. Giants win 31-17. Monday Night Football, we have the Bears and the Seahawks. What once would have probably been a really good game really isn't that exciting this year. Both teams are 0-1. It's at Soldier Field. The spread is Chicago is giving the Seahawks 3.5. This is one of those games that could go either way. I'm not thrilled about it. I will take the Seahawks getting the 3.5 with the veteran quarterback. I think the Bears barely win this game, so this is a close one. 23-20, I have the Bears pulling it out, but taking the Seahawks getting that half-a-point hook. And 23-20 would be an under special by a half a point with the over-under at 43.5. To recap, I probably wouldn't touch that game. Too close to call, two teams that are unpredictable, not that good. Now, I do have these all down so we can recap these for Week 3. Let's do the rundown of the receipt pool picks that I have for Week 2. Here are my 4 games. Put your dollar in to win you your $15 is usually the ratio that you get there. So number 1, the Philadelphia Eagles minus 3.5 on the road. Again, like the Eagles defense to bring that Bucs offense back down to reality. I did have the Texans. I took them out when I thought Hopkins was uncertain to play, and also Fuller wasn't sure of him. Deshaun Watson didn't look that good. So I pulled that one, although I do think Hopkins will play. So my number 2 pick then would be the Vikings minus 1, surprisingly, against Green Bay. A lot of people wouldn't take this pick. Who wants to bet against Aaron Rodgers if he does play at home? But I think the Vikings are too strong. Overall, good offense, 2 good stud wide receivers. They have Dalvin Cook in the backfield. Kirk Cousins looks good, and that defense is just on point. So they're playing well all around. I would take the Vikes minus 1, even though divisional game, probably a scary game to take for most people. Chargers is my number 3 pick for the receipt pools at minus 7.5 against Buffalo. Buffalo is not coming to play. They've already folded after Week 1. Quarterback sucks. Chargers minus 7.5. And then my 4th pick is the Ravens minus 1 against Cincinnati. I like them to pull it out. It could be a close game, but ultimately I see the Ravens win. Absolutely no faith in Andy Dalton. They are your 4 receipt pool picks. Put your dollar in the pot and win your $15. Or, like I said, you could bet against me and probably pull that out as a win. Let's move on to fantasy, and we're going to do pretty much what we did last week. I didn't write down all my fantasy picks, but some predictable people did well. Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Antonio Brown did well, although maybe not the Antonio Brown game that we're used to. I will have them written down here for Week 2, and we'll be able to recap that next week. Looking on FanDuel for the $3.5 million NFL Sunday $1 million to first place, you're going to have some sneaky picks. Ryan Fitzpatrick taking 2 of the Tampa Bay Bucs receivers in Deshaun Jackson or Mike Evans would have really set you up to be in a nice position, as well as James Conner, who was low price, but there were some high percentages on him as to be expected. But you really need those 2 people that are going to be really low percentage. And I'm going to give you, again, one top 5 pick for each position: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, a flex, and a defense. And then I'll give you a couple people from each position, 1 or 2, that I like who are not in the top 5. So let's start off with quarterback. And the top 5 quarterbacks on FanDuel are Drew Brees at $8,800 salary, Aaron Rodgers, who's questionable. We don't even know if he's going to play, at $8,700 salary. I'd wait for him later in the week. Tom Brady at $8,500 salary, Cam Newton at $8,200, and then Matt Stafford at $7,700. I am not a fan of Matt Stafford, even though he has a decent wide receiver core and plays catch-up in games. Just not a believer in him. So out of those top 5, I would take Drew Brees. Outside of the top 5, I really like Patrick Mahomes to have a big game in Pittsburgh. I think that's going to be a shootout, so he'll be a good bargain there at $7,500. And then I like Jared Goff to annihilate the Arizona Cardinals. I think he will have a touchdown to Gurley. He'll have a touchdown to get Robert Woods back in the game, and then either Brandon Cooks or Cooper Kupp. So I think he'll put up some yards. May not have as much in the second half, so that's where Gurley will probably kick in. But they're my 2 outside the top 5, like Patrick Mahomes, like Jared Goff. Running back top 5, Alvin Kamara leads the list with $9,000 salary, followed by Todd Gurley with $8,900. David Johnson at 8,400. They still have Le'Veon Bell at 4, even though he's not going to play, 8,400, and Melvin Gordon at 8,200. This top 5, you can't really go wrong with any of them, obviously excluding Bell. You can't go wrong with Kamara. I am so disappointed in myself. I had the 4th pick in my fantasy draft. I took Antonio Brown, which you can't really say anything bad about Antonio Brown, but Alvin Kamara just had a ton of upside this year. You should grab that running back whenever you can, and I did not, so definitely disappointed. So Alvin Kamara, I would take him out of the top 5, but Gurley I could see having a monster game against Arizona, as well as Melvin Gordon doing well at Buffalo as well. Now, outside of the top 5, I have 2 picks, so we'll go back with James Conner. Again, that game's going to be a shootout, and I think he'll be heavily involved in that. So he'll be a nice pick, although he is not as low as he was last time. Let me see where he's at. He's at 7,000, so a far cry from the $5,000 salary he was last week. So not really a sleeper. Dalvin Cook, I like him to come up big against Green Bay. I think Minnesota will try to run the ball a lot to limit Aaron Rodgers' touches, and Dalvin Cook will get a hefty workload and do some work against that Green Bay defense, which is good but not great. And then my sleeper pick, look out for Philip Lindsay, who, unfortunately for me, I have Royce Freeman, who did well. They had the same amount of touches. I think they both had 71 yards, somewhere in that area. But Philip Lindsay definitely caught more balls out of the backfield, and looks like those two are going to continue to split that timeshare. So he could be a sneaky pick against Oakland, and he's only $4,900 salaries. Definitely want to capitalize on those low salary guys and the $4,900 range. Wide receiver, top 5, Antonio Brown, number 1, 8,900. Michael Thomas is 2 at 8,800, although he is listed as questionable with an illness. So he did not practice Wednesday. Nobody really knows what it is. It could just be something small, so just keep an eye on that. If he does play, he's always in the top 5 to be picked. We have Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, who's also questionable with a foot injury, although I think he'll play, and then Tyreek Hill. So some duds in the top 5. Tyreek Hill coming off a big game. Really like how him with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes may have the best arm in the league. That kid can just air it out, and that's Tyreek Hill's specialty, is just burning everybody and catching that deep ball. So that's a scary, scary tandem, those two. But of the top 5, I think you got to go with Old Faithful, Antonio Brown, the number 1, with the $8,900 salary. Again, a shootout in KC, and I think you can't go wrong there. I also think Julio Jones has a decent game, but Tyreek Hill could have the top game again out of those. Go with Old Faithful in a PPR, get Antonio Brown, get those points. Now, the other receiver I like to be maybe a sneaky play, but not so much, is Josh Gordon. He was supposed to be lightly put into the mix week 1. He was in there for 69 of the 89 snaps. Week 2, I think there's no holding him back. He is listed as a starter now on the depth chart, whereas last week I think he was behind one of the rookies. And he's a decently priced wide receiver at $6,300. The guy obviously has the talent. If he catches the ball in some space, he can be gone. I like him as my sneaky pick for, but not so sneaky, wide receiver at $6,300. That's a good price. Tight ends. I think Travis Kelce will bounce back, and Patrick Mahomes and him will find a bit of a connection against Pittsburgh. I like him to get back to his ways. I'm going to say he has a touchdown, 100 yards receiving, maybe about 8 catches there. So look for Travis Kelce. Top 5 is Gronk, coming in at number 1, 8,100. Kelce at number 2, 6,800. Ertz, number 3 at 6,500. Olsen, even though he's out, at 6,300. And then Jordan Reed at 6,200, which Jordan Reed didn't do too bad, although he hasn't been dependable past couple years. Also think Zach Ertz can bounce back this game against Tampa Bay, so keep an eye out for him. I don't really like Gronk's price at 8,100 against that tough Jacksonville defense. I know he can basically catch the ball even if he's covered, just bully people and use his size. I think I would go with either Kelce or Ertz, for my pick this week, and I picked Kelsey, so I'll stick with him. And then outside of the top 5, Jared Cook, way down there at 5,000, I think is a steal. If anybody watched that game, you see that he was definitely David Carr's outlet. David Carr felt comfortable playing against 2 lockdown corners, so that mattered as well in terms of Jordy Nelson and the other wide receiver being covered there. But I do like Jared Cook still to be that outlet. He looked like a stud. He was running people over, in particular Aqib Talib. $5,000, you really can't go wrong with that play. Flex. What I'll do is just give you a few people who are not highly priced that I like that could be big. Number 1, Randall Cobb had an outstanding game last week, and him and Rodgers seem to be in their connection of the old days there. But if Rodgers plays, and this is a big if he plays, I love Randall Cobb next week, especially due to the fact that Devontae Adams will see a lot of Xavier Rhodes, so I'm sure he'll outlet to Randall Cobb. Look for him. Philip Lindsay, again, I mentioned him earlier. You could throw him in there as a flex as well. So Randall Cobb, Philip Lindsay, fill up your flex there. Defense here, top 5. We have Los Angeles Rams at 4,800. Broncos, 4,500 at number 2. Texans, number 3 at 4,500. Vikings, number 4 at 4,400. And then the Eagles, number 5 at 4,400. So that just goes to show you, Vikings at number 4, one of the reasons why I like them in the game. I think the defense will hold Green Bay fairly well with or without Rodgers. But my pick from this top 5 is going to be the Eagles. Again, look for the Eagles to bring Fitzmagic back down to size, back down to earth, and they're going to shut them out pretty good. I think Tampa Bay scores anywhere from 13 to 17 points, wouldn't be scored less, and I think the Eagles may get a defensive touchdown this game. So keep an eye out for the Eagles. Like them in the top 5. Outside the top 5, you don't have to look any further than pick 6, which is the Chargers against the Bills. This may be the top pick of the all 6. I think the Chargers are going to annihilate the Buffalo Bills offense with that quarterback. It's not going to be pretty. So I'd go with the Chargers there for fantasy. And that is it. So just to recap, quarterbacks, we have Breeze, Mahomes, and Goff. Running backs, Kumara, Connor, Dalvin Cook, and Philip Lindsay is the sneaky play. Wide receiver, Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon. Tight ends, Travis Kelce, Jared Cook. Flex, we have Randall Cobb and, again, Philip Lindsay. And then defenses, the Eagles and Chargers. And that will get you to cash in the Sunday Million. So thank me later, everybody, for that one. Don't forget about the Canelo Triple G fight this Saturday for all you boxing fans. That's going to be a showdown. I got my boy Triple G taking out Canelo this time. I think he wins it. A lot of people think it's going to be the reverse. I think Canelo's going to lose a bit of his confidence, not on the juice, not eating that steroid horse meat or whatever the hell he said he was eating. Triple G wins this. Not sure. Might go to a decision. Hopefully we see a knockout. Hopefully we see a good fight overall. All right, and that is all I have for NFL Week 2. I will not slack this week. I will put up some my picks on social media, Twitter, which is Storytime with Boots. Facebook is Storytime with Boots. Instagram is Storytime with Boots. And Twitter Storytime W Boots. So keep an eye out there. I will put up my fantasy picks. We'll put up our receipt pool picks and some pictures. Make sure you check us out for the next episode. All right, turkeys.